course, as I stated, a father is irreplaceable. So replacing the father is not an option. But in those circumstances where it's not ideal and where the father somehow is not available, I think it would be a great choice to find a male role model. Of course, it's different from a father-daughter relationship since they're not related in any way. But it's still a great alternative if the situation is unideal. So having a male role model, of course, a complementary male role model, like from the church or from the school, not someone outside who they've never met. It's going to decrease the effects of an absent father since they can finally see like what a male is supposed to do. Like,
so my question to that is, though, do you think that that is actually healthy? Yeah, because if we think about child grooming, which is a thesis we had earlier, is there any danger in looking for another male who is not your father to be that kind of, in that kind of a relationship, like an older man with a young girl? Does that seem dangerous to you in any way? Because that should raise some child safety bells in your head.
of course, danger. It depends on what kind of role that adult male is playing in the lives of the daughter. So if the other male is just offering to become, it's not necessarily like they're replacing a father, right? So they're like, what's it called? Like showing what a male is supposed to do. So it's not necessarily they have to like, oh yeah, come, I'll buy you ice cream and stuff like that, like what a father is supposed to do. It's more that they're showing what men are supposed to be like. It's like, of course, they can have a relationship, like, not loving relationship, but like a mentor relationship kind of thing. It's not a father-daughter relationship since he's not their father. It's more like a mentor kind of thing. So I think even though, the dangers might appear if they find an adult male who is not following the ways of the Lord.
Right, because I think what we learned in the thesis about grooming is that Christian communities in particular are really vulnerable because we have a high level of trust for someone who's in the church or in a Christian school. And so they actually have really easy access to vulnerable girls. And what your research was showing is that you're seeking that affirmation, seeking that attention as a young girl because you didn't get it from your biological father. So it's actually, you're really at high risk to be abused and to have some kind of inappropriate relationship develop. So yeah, I think you'd want to be cautious for that.
All right, my first question is from Putri's thesis. She talked about 13% of abusers are parents, sexual abusers are parents. Do you think if there's an increase in fathers being present, that there will also be an increase in fathers abusing their children?
I think this is why it's very important to get proper education on what a father is supposed to do. Of course, we cannot control everyone and tell them not to be abusers and stuff like that, but it is the education of what a father is supposed to do is the base for what fathers think they're supposed to do. So if those kinds of situations happen, like we can prevent it from happening if we underline what a father is supposed to do in a children's life, which is not to abuse them. So it's more on preventing it from happening instead of like letting it happen and then reversing it.
Yeah. Okay. And then I know this very reputable, very good Christian adoption organization. It's an international adoption organization, and they offer adoptions for single mothers. So like girls who are like, I could adopt someone, but they do not offer adoptions to single fathers. So what are your thoughts on a single woman who wants to be a mother, maybe doesn't have the opportunity to meet someone and get married and wants to adopt. Do you think that's a good decision for a child or not? Yes, I considered it. She considered it too. So what do you think? Do you think it's a good option for the child, or do you think they need a father? No, that's not a good option for the child.
I think that although this is a hard situation since the child is in an adoption center, but I still think that those single mothers should not adopt the child, because it's proven that like children with single mothers of like feel the effects that I've stated before. So it's more like if the mom is trying to think of adopting the child to help them have a better lifestyle, it's still they should have a father to have a better lifestyle in this case. So it's like to adopt a child, you're trying to think of the future of the child, right? For the better lifestyle of the child. If they're thinking of that, they should understand that a child needs a father in the life.
But isn't adopting, like if a child from an orphanage in rural India or rural China came and lived with Miss Bethany, wouldn't that be a better life for the child than in an adoption, in an orphanage where they don't have any parent? Wouldn't that be better?
I think an option to this would be like fostering instead of like taking into care of, like the children can come and live in the house and yeah, just have a better lifestyle in general, but it's not necessarily adopting. So it's not, oh, like I'm your mom and I'm a single mom, but it's more like, oh, I'll take care of you in my household where you can grow in a better lifestyle.
I mean, it's different because you're not taking the child in as your own. But, yeah. I also don't see how it helps, like, the child who's in the orphanage in rural India. Like, are they going to live a better life in the orphanage, or are they going to live a better life with Miss Bethany?
I think from what I know, and what most orphanages would prefer, particularly if they're religious, is the preference is always given to couples who are looking to adopt.
Right.
And then if no one is left for the child, then it's like, then it's given up to consider for single parents.
Yeah.
So, or single moms specifically. But yeah, so I think we maintain that the ideal scenario is two parents.
Which is what you were arguing,
Yeah.
which is absolutely the ideal scenario. But we all know that in a fallen world, we can't have always the ideal. And even when you have a parent, when you have a father that's physically in the home, he may emotionally not be present, right? So, right, we have to deal with the effects of the fallen world. And I appreciate that what you're doing is emphasizing how important the role of the father is in the development of the child, not just as I'm the provider, I've given you a home and helped you get to college, because I think that's a very different kind of provision, and what you're looking to do is something deeper and stronger. So thank you for bringing this to our attention.
Yes, thank you so much. I was going to ask another question, but we're out of time. So y'all give a hand for Kenny. All right, let's take a 5-minute break and start at 12. Do I have a story about Kenny? I don't have a specific story about Kenny. Her laugh. I do like Kenny's laugh. Kenny's part of my homeroom, right? And she brings so much joy to the homeroom. It wouldn't be the same without Kenny. And I think I can be very sarcastic sometimes, and I really appreciate that Kenny understands, appreciates, and reciprocates my sarcasm. I think that's one thing that I have really enjoyed about having Kenny in my homeroom. But I know that wherever Kenny goes and whatever she does, she will be successful at it. Kenny has a natural ability to, a natural both like academic, but also social ability. And it's really admirable to see that in someone so young. So I know that wherever she goes, whatever she does, she will be successful. All right, the title of Kenny's thesis, C, Do Not Touch, Father Figures on Display. Welcome, Kenny.
Okay, first and foremost, I'd like to thank God for bringing all of you here to be able to witness my thesis. I'd also like to thank my panelists here, Mrs. Denise and Miss Bethany, as well as my advisors, Miss Monique, who unfortunately cannot be here, and Miss Layla. I would also like to thank my family for being here and also my friends. Without further ado, I'll start my thesis. A Korean drama titled 18 Again tells the story of how a divorced father makes a wish to go back to his 18-year-old self, which somehow comes true. So he decides to go back to school to fulfill his wishes of becoming a basketball player. As he does so, however, he realizes he failed as a father to his twins. All his hard work to earn money and provide for his children, down the drain. As he becomes their classmate, he encounters his son being bullied by basketball players. And of course, he stands up for them. He also encounters his daughter having a secret part-time job to save her own money. And some of that money is being used to buy cigarettes, which he caught her smoking in school. He also figures out that his daughter would always keep her thoughts and problems to herself and would eventually explode due to the fact that she thought her parents were too busy to be bothered. His son also feels that his parents aren't interested in him, so he kept the fact that he was being picked on by basketball jocks and his hobby to play basketball from his parents. Whenever the father called them as their father, the children would lie and act cold and tell him that they were doing something they weren't. This Korean drama shows that fathers might have the wrong idea of their role in their teenagers' lives. Their children thought that their father was doing nothing for them, but their father thought that he was doing everything for them. He thought that by earning money, constantly nagging, and never being at home, that's what a father is supposed to do. Hence, a father is irreplaceable. Fathers should fulfill their duties by being involved in their teenager's life since it affects their self-esteem, social skills, and cognitive skills. There's a Bible story that tells us how impactful a father really is. Do you know the story of Eli? One of the most memorable fathers in the Bible is Eli, with his two wicked sons, Hophni and Phinehas. Long story short, Eli's poor fatherhood led them to become rebellious, even bringing a curse upon their whole family line. While the actual research on fathers began in the late 1960s and early 1970s. This was when wars started breaking out, leading to most men becoming soldiers, which resulted in absent fathers. One of the first researches shows that those children with absent fathers have less masculine behavior. So the start of this issue took place way back before this era, but it's still a continuous thing that needs to be fixed. Before we go further, we can all agree that every child has a biological father who is significant and has an impact on the kids, whether it be financially, emotionally, or intellectually. But let me define what a father is. According to the Merriam Dictionary, a father is a male parent, and a parent is a person who brings up and cares for another. But what is a father supposed to do according to the biblical perspective? Ephesians 6 verse 4 says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." Here, exasperate means irritate intensely. So what the Bible says what a father is supposed to do is to educate their children in the teachings of the Lord instead of irritating them. Even though a child's development starts ever since they were born into the family, I will strictly focus on the impacts a father has on a teenager. Teenagers, adolescents, and children that I mentioned are strictly between the ages to 12 to 21. Teenagers are faced with a lot of simultaneous transitions, which are hormonal, social, emotional, and spiritual. These changes cause them to be more unconfident, more sensitive, and, in worst cases, end up stressed or depressed. A father is truly important in guiding them through those teenage years. But when can we say a father is absent from his family? An absent parent, or in this case, an absent father, is a father who is not providing care or control for the family, or who cannot be counted on in the planning for physical care, guidance, or maintenance of the child. Ironically though, most Indonesians view fathers as the breadwinners of the family, while mothers are known to be the only ones who should nurture the child. So what should we do about it? Fathers should realize their role in the family, start to develop relationships with their children, and spend time with them. An effort to repair a broken relationship or improve a relationship between father and child is needed. Why is it needed? It is needed because fathers are crucial for their teenagers' self-esteem and confidence. A father deeply impacts whether a child feels loved or unworthy of love. The self-esteem is how a person values themselves. The attachment theory states that a secure attachment to the caregiver contributes to how a person feels valued. Research shows that secure attachments increase self-worth and importance. For adolescents, secure attachments come from a relationship that includes trust, support, acceptance, and positive communication. Even though adolescents will learn to form different relationships outside the family, their parents are the base for them to be able to explore the new world outside and will promote their self-esteem. Both parents have different yet complementary roles in the attachment relationships, which both needs to be developed. As the saying goes, a good beginning makes a good ending. So if the children are raised well from the start, they will have a higher chance of finding success and finding happiness in life. A father's relationship with his wife also directly influences his children. Having conflicts between spouses leads to those children trying to find a reason for those conflicts. They might blame themselves, thinking that their action or failure caused discord between their parents. This leads them to feel remorse, as well as a strong desire to help out. Those children are more likely to develop internalizing problems and develop disruptive behavior. Having a strong foundation for self-esteem is key. During adolescence, a teen's exploration of their new world is overtaking their dependence on their parents. However, children with present fathers report a higher level of self-reported happiness, less depression, less psychological distress, and lower neuroticism. If teenagers view themselves as someone worthless, where can they find true joy in life? It is a father's duty to try their best to help them feel secure in their own identities. Next, fathers also boost their teenagers' self-confidence. One of the ways this is done is by giving them the freedom to go through their own challenges without fear of disappointing. If the parents do not give growth room for their children, how will they be able to face the outside world? Everyone agrees that challenges in life are what help us grow, even if they hurt. It would hurt more for a teenager to know that they have disappointed their parents after going through such a tough challenge. Adolescents need self-confidence to survive in this challenging world. While self-confidence is related to self-esteem, having high self-esteem does not guarantee that one always feels confident. During adolescence, teenagers are faced with changes in physical appearance and the difficulty to be accepted in friendship groups. If the children understand that they are loved, they would not feel as insecure. It is a father's duty to try to express the unconditional love from God that everyone should equally receive. They should receive love as deep as an ocean, not as shallow as a puddle. Other than their self-esteem and self-confidence, fathers actually play a deep role in building their teenagers' social skills and life. Fathers play a dominant role in helping their teenagers to be able to build long-term relationships and work in groups. Teenagers with present fathers are socially competent. Being socially competent includes respecting and expressing appreciation for others, the ability to behave according to social norms, and also the ability to resolve conflict. Ever since they were little, children learn a lot from their interactions with family and friends. They even copy them. They carefully watch how their parents talk, eat, make facial expressions, hold the phone, brush their hair, and even the words and tone of voice. If the father is non-affectionate and absent from the family, the children will find it difficult to understand how to be affectionate and will find it difficult to trust others. Expressing their feelings in a relationship is one of the most crucial points, as no one can read anybody else's mind. Children with absent fathers also tend to be more attention-seeking than those children who have present fathers. Research shows that daughters with absent fathers have sought more attention from male adults and initiated more physical interactions with their male peers. They do not receive any acknowledgement from their fathers, so they find other ways to get it. Young, vulnerable girls will try to find it from somewhere else, but who knows what kind of danger awaits them in the outside world. They might suffer terrible tragedies, some as terrible as promiscuity and teen pregnancy. In addition to being attention-seeking, fatherless children are more likely to commit crimes and be associated with aggression. Research indicates that 85% of youth in prison are fatherless. Fatherless children are more likely to manifest behavior problems and develop an intimidating personality in order to disguise their unhappiness. Fatherless sons are more likely to be overly expressive of anger through violence. Having a father in the family does not guarantee that teens are free of youth crime, yet it is still a great way to prevent it from happening. Fathers also greatly impact their teenagers' cognitive skills and academic success. Fathers actually lead their children to have a better chance of succeeding academically. They have a major impact on their children's IQ and cognitive skills. Cognitive skills are the core skills that relate to individual learning and aspects such as attention, memory, thinking, and reasoning. Fathers tend to ask children more questions than mothers, which increases their vocabulary and conversational skills. The social learning theory states that children learn from observation, which means that an evolved father will be teaching them how to reinforce, adapt, and pursue their goals. Not only while spending time together, a parent's involvement in their studies are also as important. Research proves that children whose parents are involved in their studies scored up to 7 months higher in reading and maths than those who do not. Although grades aren't the most important aspects of life, maximizing their ability to use language affects the way kids befriend and socialize with someone. Having a great idea needs the ability to express that idea in words for others to understand it. Other than academics, fathers encourage their children to be brave enough to take risks and pursue their goals. Fathers are more likely to tease their children and encourage them to be able to take calculated risks more than mothers. Mothers tend to encourage them to take account of others' feelings, which is why both developments are needed for their children's peak development. Pursuing goals requires a lot of toughness and grit. However, fatherless children are more likely to be mentally ill. They suffer depression, anxiety, and even suicide. Some of the factors are neglect, social isolation, severe or long-term stress, and loneliness. To conclude, a child's cognitive skills are highly shaped by their fathers. Despite all the facts that I have said earlier about how impactful a father really is to his teenagers, some people still say that fathers can be replaced by other men who can instead portray a father figure to the teenager. Although other men could indeed be a father figure to the teenager, a father is irreplaceable. An example of a fatherless daughter is none other than the famous singer Adele. Her father abandoned her at the age of 3 due to alcohol. As they finally meet and talk, Adele says, "I felt a huge gaping hole being filled." This shows that even though Adele is an amazing singer and has a successful career, she still had a hole in her heart for her father. A missing father will leave a void that no one else can truly fill. While a brother or an uncle can be a positive father figure, expecting a brother to become a father figure leads them to become parentified. They still lack the maturity it has to become a parent. It forces them to have parental skills at such a young age. While an uncle can be a father figure with enough love, simply showing unconditional love for a child who is not their own could be a hard challenge. Others might argue that some households with absent fathers have managed to raise stable children. Even though this fact is true, the effects that I have stated before will most likely still be felt, especially for sons who will have a hard time controlling their emotions due to the fact that they cannot see a figure at home to understand how to treat their significant other, their children, their grandchildren, and overall how to do more masculine behavior. For daughters, it will be hard for them to understand how men are supposed to treat women like they're not just some objects that can be taken for granted. They need to have a positive male role model that can show them how a true man would treat women. Research even proves that fatherless daughters have difficulty with their relationship with men. Some find it okay to have a physical relationship. Some find it okay to find emotionally unavailable men, or men who are not available at all. This sort of issue is usually described with the term daddy issues, which has become quite popular in the 21st century. Although a mother can teach their children how to be a gentleman or how to value themselves, they cannot directly see a gentleman or see how a true man would treat women. Now, we have seen the impacts a father has on a teenager's self-esteem, self-confidence, social skills, and cognitive skills. Let's rewind to the drama I talked about in the beginning. At the end of the Korean drama 18 Again, the father eventually realizes that he lost the true role of a father and realizes that being for his family is more important than anything else. So as he turns back to his father self, he decides to spend time for his children and rebuild their relationship. He spared his time to watch his son's basketball game, which motivated him to play well and eventually win. As his son wins, he runs over to his father and hugs him. His father pats him on the back, telling him, "Good job," as his son starts to cry because he feels very moved. The father even came and stood up for his daughter who was being falsely accused, and his daughter also hugged him and cried out of joy. Although the children find it awkward at first, a father's improvement is really impactful for them. They are really happy that their father finally wants to come for them and improve. So what is essential is the willingness to improve for the better. The stereotypical view that mothers are the only caretakers of the children should be broken. Taking care of the children is not an action only specified to women, but to parents as a unit. Let us slowly but surely raise awareness and build a new way of perceiving what a father is supposed to do. As children, we can try to build a relationship with the father, or at least start a conversation. For fathers, it will not be easy for you to step out of your comfort zone, and it might be awkward and weird at first. It should be done out of pure love for your children, and their grandchildren. Let us build a new generation of children who can view their fathers as a comforting and trustworthy male role model, not a man who is too busy to be present in their lives. Thank you.
My watch says 20 minutes and 2 seconds.
No, it says 1950.
Okay. Congratulations, Kenny. Very well done. I'm going to give it to Miss Bethany first.
Yay, good job, Kenny. Yeah, I feel very strongly about this topic as you do, so good job. I guess I'm going to wait. You're good. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you have demonstrated just how necessary, like, a father's presence is in the home. So I just have a couple of questions on, I feel like everyone, yourself or anyone who's like slightly conservative, political commentators, everyone is talking about this crisis of fatherlessness. You hear it come up a lot in articles, like we have this fatherlessness issues, people who are fatherless end up, incarcerated. The odds of that are so you hear all this information. I guess my question is, in your research, what do you think what's brought us to this present moment? Why is there such a crisis of fatherlessness currently plaguing our society? What's different than what was the case like 40 years ago maybe? Why is there such an upshot in this issue?
So may I clarify, you're asking why the reason of this father issue is being so highly brought up in the current
and with
situation?
Gen Z, why is this such a concern now? What societal factors, what cultural factors have brought it about?
Okay. Thank you for the question, first of all. From what I've researched, and everyone knows that in the beginning of human society, there used to be this patriarchy kind of social lifestyle where men are known to be stronger than women. Men are known to have more power than women. So they were the ones who became soldiers. They were the ones who took jobs for earning money for their family. While in reality, that's not really the case now, since many people are fighting for human rights, equal rights. Female and male can all get education and get their own jobs and earn money by themselves, which is why nowadays people view this is not what a father is supposed to do. Fathers, of course, they can earn money and provide for the family, but they have a different purpose in the family. This is also the case that nowadays more fathers are becoming more absent in the family. They think that their only job is to earn money and provide for his children, when in reality a father has more duty in the family, equal duties as a mother. So what I would say the leading cause of this uproar is because people are realizing that men and women are more equal than they think. They think that women can also earn money for the family, not only the fathers. So they somehow come to the realization that, fathers are actually important in a child's life.
Okay. That kind of answers my question, but I guess I'm more specifically why are so many fathers absent now, as opposed to 40 years ago? Why has there been such an increase?
Actually, as I researched, although there is an increase, fathers ever since the early 1960s, where war started breaking out, they were absent from the family.
Okay.
Nowadays, I think it's more of an uproar because they kind of value money more in this real world. Nowadays, money is a very important aspect of life. Money buys everything.
Yeah.
They can buy food, provide for the house, and rent stuff like that. So I think most fathers are more focused on the thought that they need to provide for the family, since money is very important. So they find it more important to find jobs rather than actually focus on their family, because they actually think that mothers are the ones that should be taking care of the children.
Okay. So in that case, like in your research that you quote, is it like, so fatherlessness, are you considering both an emotionally unavailable father, which is different than literally your father abandoning you,
Yes.
right? Those are two different scenarios. Are you considering them under the same umbrella?
I'm considering them under the same umbrella.
Okay, so these both qualify as like fatherless homes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So in your view, that it would be, I guess, almost as bad for a father to be in the home but not emotionally available,
Yes.
as bad as someone, I guess, just a father just abandoning his family.
Yes.
They're comparable.
It's equally as bad.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. I don't know that I fully agree with that, but okay. I do agree. Emotionally unavailable fathers are not great. Okay. So we have all this information on how not having a father in the home or not having an emotionally available father in the home does like damage, right, to kids in some way. It sets them back, whether it's socially, cognitively. I guess my question is, what encouragement can you offer to people who are in these scenarios? They're living in them, right? They have neglectful fathers, or I mean, maybe not so much in Indonesia because marriage is still upheld as very important. But what they've had all these setbacks now. They've had a father who wasn't kind or who wasn't available. Now they're living with the consequences. What do we do? Like, what do you go from? Where do you go from there?
Of course, it's different per case. Some children might actually heal from like those kinds of broken families by going to a very supportive community, or maybe they can see a counselor to help them cope with this kind of trauma or wounds that a father has left. But an encouragement for those children, if they still have a chance, is to approach their fathers, even though it might be hard. It's still a right step in the right direction. So it's very important for the children, if they realize how important their father really is in their lives, they can try to take a step further towards their father.
Okay, so they try to initiate
Yeah.
that conversation. Okay, and I guess as individuals, like maybe you have a great relationship with your dad. I do, right? What can we do then as individuals, as part of a church or a school specifically, I guess, to reach out to such people?
It's more like, since we cannot replace a father's role, it's more like we have to become a positive community where they can feel like they're accepted, and where they can feel that they can try to find positivity. In a sense, it's like, since fatherless children are more likely to face identity crisis, we can help them to understand that they are being loved by God, and they can try their best. Like, we can encourage them to, like, oh, maybe you can reach out to your father or something like that. But although that might be easier said than done, so what we can do is just be a good listener and maybe just provide comforting words for those kinds of people.
Okay. Yeah, so try our best to be an encouragement if we notice.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I guess part of being the body of Christ is we get to like jump in and fulfill the roles, right? That's, beauty of belonging to a community, which you mentioned in your thesis. I think that's it. Yeah, my other questions are more just directed to, do you have data on specifically like fatherlessness in Indonesia? Do you have data on step versus like step and adoptive fathers? Can they, like, are kids who have good relationships with, their adopted parents or their step parents, do they suffer the same losses? Or, yeah.
Okay, from my research, I actually saw this recently. It's said that Indonesia is becoming like the top 3 in the fatherlessness,
wow.
like the top 3 fatherless country.
And this
in the
includes
world.
absent fathers.
Yes,
Like,
it includes, like, it's in Indonesia. It's more likely the case of father hunger. It's like the father is there, but they're emotionally absent.
Okay, so emotionally absent.
Yeah,
okay.
emotionally absent. And for the research about stepfathers or like just
Adopted parents.
adopted parents, it decreases the effects of an absent father, but it still doesn't completely like replaces a biological father, because those children who are like have a stepfather or have adopted parents, they're more likely to like try to find out who their biological father is. So it's still has the effects happening, but it's lessened if they have a
Absorb
good
some of
relationship.
the risk
Yes.
factors. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's all for me.
Hey, Kenisha, I thought that was a really interesting thesis, and I enjoyed listening to it. And also, just FYI, I'm going to give you a little information. You know your opening story about the Korean drama 18 Again? Totally a redo of an American drama called 17 Again.
American one was the redo of the Korean one, right?
Really?
No, I don't think so.
17 Again was first.
17 Again was like a long time ago, probably when she was still
I think I
kid.
told her that.
But anyway, I love that movie because I love that you opened with that, because it was a great picture of what an emotionally absent father kind of looks like. And I think that was as Bethany was saying, that there's kind of physical abandonment, or you never knew your father kind of a thing. But then there's the father's there, but not really engaged in any way. Yeah. So I think that's probably a little bit more common. So let me ask you this, and kind of following up on Bethany's question, and you just mentioned the research. Indonesia is now one of the leading countries for fatherlessness, from an emotionally fatherless perspective, or having this father hunger. So do you have any thoughts on why that is? What is that? Why is that? Is it a cultural Southeast Asian thing, or you know what I mean?
I think one of the main leading reasons is that most Indonesians and maybe Asian countries still view men to be the ones who should provide for the family. Like, men are the ones who should get jobs.
Make the money.
Yes, make the
Yeah.
money. So they don't necessarily understand that a father's duty is more than just making money for the family.
I think that's right. I think Asian culture really values that strongly, that you're the provider. It's a burden on the husband, and he feels like that's his role. And so kind of like in the drama that you were discussing, the father thinks, I'm doing all these things for my kids because I'm making the money so they can have all these great things. And the kids are like, we just want you, right? Yeah, nice. So if we see that, then did you do any research about, because you talked about the negative impacts from sort of a socio-emotional level, from a academic level, but what about a spiritual level? How does having an absentee father, or an emotionally distant father, or a physically absent father, how does that impact a relationship with the Heavenly Father? Did you do any research on that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
So for research, I think I only came across it like a couple of times, and I didn't really dig deeper into it. But in my opinion, since God put a physical father in our lives to represent, like, be his working arms and working legs for the family, it's the impact on the kids is like, they're supposed to understand that God is a loving father, but if their earthly father isn't portraying that, they will have a harder time understanding and grasping the idea that there is a father way above my earthly father who loves me unconditionally. So it might be harder for them to understand that concept.
I think you're right. I think when you have that trauma, even making that, because the imagery of a heavenly father is meant to be a comforting image, right? But if you have a poor earthly father, when you pray, Dear Heavenly Father, that may not bring a sense of comfort, right? That may be a traumatic feeling. Yeah, I agree with you. Well said. So then what would you say about current research, because now we have a lot of families who have different kinds of family structures. So there's two moms, right, instead of a father and a mother. So is there research that shows two moms are equally proficient at providing what a child needs, so that you don't have to physically have a male? Because when you define father, you said it was a male parent. So can you speak to that?
So I unfortunately didn't really research on this, but my opinion on it would be that God intends a family to have a male and a female parent, which is a mother and a father. If in the beginning, I opposed this same-sex marriage kind of thing and same-sex family, but to support this, it's more like a male parent and a female parent have different but complementary roles in parenting. So it's different when you have the same sex, like two dads or two moms. They're going to be lacking a sort of aspect in parenting. So it's still a no for me, and it's like very, I'm pretty sure like they have certain more aspects, like for mothers they're supposed to be more emotional, and for fathers they're supposed to give the more logical effects. Even though some fathers might be more emotional and some mothers might be more logical, it's still those two parents who are going to build the children, and it's not the ideal parents if it's both female or both male.
Yeah, there actually, so just to encourage you, there actually is research that shows that children growing up with parents who have two mothers or two fathers, that they have some later issues in adjustment. Yeah, even from people that are looking at it from a secular perspective, psychologists that aren't even looking at it from a Christian perspective. So just so you know, that research does exist.
Kenny, were you here for Frey's thesis?
Yes.
Yeah, Frey had that story.
Yeah, I think so. Right. Yeah. So then I guess the final question is a little bit like what Miss Bethany was sharing. How can we as a society, in particular as the church, the body of Christ, and or as a school, like I'm the head of CBCS, right? So what could we do better to emphasize, to promote? What can we do to help fathers in these next generation of fathers and these younger kids, like we have all these preschool kids, right? So what do we do? How can we help change this trajectory of fatherlessness?
So recently, I don't know if you guys know this, but there's some classes called parenting classes, and the school is holding them and the church is holding them, like my parents hold them. But yeah, so those kinds of parenting classes like help parents understand that fathers are equally as important in childcare as mothers are. So they teach how to raise complementary children and children who walk in the ways of God. So I think that is one of the most ideal kinds of solution to this situation.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer and a good solution. I also think that it helps when you have fathers, like mentor fathers, when you have older fathers. I'm not saying that he's old, your father, or anything, but I'm just saying whose maybe last child is finishing their high school career and about to be launched into the world, and they'll be empty nesters. Perhaps they will have wisdom to share with the younger fathers, right? And sometimes you can learn from, here are the things that I did wrong, here are the things that I did well, and here's what I want to encourage you. Yeah, I think that's helpful. I actually thought of one more question. So some girls or children don't have father figures, right? Like because maybe there's a death, maybe the father has died. I mean, there's maybe circumstances outside of their control.
Maybe he was just a bad dad and he left, and there's nothing that they could do about it.
Right. I mean, it's not the fault of anybody, but I'm just saying there is no father figure. Or the father, I know in Indonesia, I know a lot of situations where the father works on another island because he can't get work here because we're so overpopulated. So you've got a lot of families that are kind of split. So the question is, what kind of, I know you said having a supportive community, but is it appropriate to look for a replacement father figure, like an older male mentor, or do you think that could be dangerous, and is there a difference between like the father-daughter relationship and the father-son relationship in that scenario?
Okay.